Hi everyone, welcome to this session where we'll look at one of the very important patterns in ranking, which is called document scoring based on query analysis. You'll see from this pattern that this was engineered by some of the most important engineers in search, such as Jeffrey Dean, Paul Haar, and Monica Hessingwinger, as well as Steve Lawrence. So keep a very close understanding that you have to watch this one because it is a very important patent. Where this fits in, it fits in the scoring and ranking session part of the search system. So we have all this information retrieval system, and here we see that we are targeting scoring and ranking. This is why it's a very important one. So we're looking at the component of a search engine right now. We have the document locator, the history component, and the ranking component within the search engine, which communicate with the document corpus, which is kind of the Google index. So the document locator identifies a set of documents. So it just kind of does this initial information retrieval. And then the historic component gathers history data from the document and returns history scores used in ranking by the ranking component. So most of what we'll talk today will go in that history component, and then we will cover a little bit of what the ranking component does, but most of the pattern goes here in the history component. So the ranking component returns relevant document to the user by ranking a set of documents identified by the document locator. So here we look at the document locator in small detail. Essentially what the document locator does is that it does the initial information retrieval. So it matches the query to the document, returns an inverted index with scores, and then this is transferred to the history component, which will further up improve the rankings. And this patent that I'm seeing here is the one that is the most uh, uh, complete to describe the document locator. We'll maybe cover it in further sessions. But what we really want to focus on here is the history component. The history component is the core of this patent, and it shows how Google uses history data in order to improve modify the ranks based on a few stuff like freshness and staleness, spam signals, trends in search queries, trends in document changes, frequency of selection, user behavior, and they even look at the speed of ranking changes in order to modify score in the future. So here, one thing I would really want to mention is that Google looks mostly at upward and downward trends and not absolute. So they try to build either linear regression to find trends and changes uh, in order to score those documents. So it's rarely absolute, mostly trend variations. So let's see how Google uses some of the concept described in this patent to rank documents. So according to this patent, the way ranking documents are made is that the document locator receives the search query and searches the Google index in order to retrieve an inverted index with all the documents with some kind of score next to it. And the history component receives that. It looks at history data, and we'll define history data later. It looks at the history data to improve and give a history score to each of these documents. Then it returns this query and the history score for the query to the ranking component, which then rank all the documents to be returned into search. So again, keep in mind throughout this tutorial that Google look at both absolute changes, but mostly at trends over time. So the rate of changes is more important, and we'll discuss that later. It can compare documents to the average of all ranking documents. So This is why it's not an absolute value. So instead of just saying, are you good or aren't you bad, it will look at, are you good compared to the overall group? So if Google wants, if the overall group is all very fresh pages and your page is very old, then you're bad. But if all pages are very old and yours is very old too, then you're fine. The other thing is when Google don't have enough resources to store the entire document, they may just store signatures. So for example, they can store a hash. They can convert the entire content into a 64-byte hash and just look at these hashes in order to check for relative changes. And then depending on like we're talking about a lot of ranking, we'll be talking about a lot of ranking factors in this patent. Uh, but one thing to bear in mind is a lot of these ranking factors depend on the query because sometimes for the same ranking factor and for the same page, the ranking may go up for a query and may go down for another query. So it depends on the query, and these are called query-based ranking factor. So what this patent is about, it's about freshness-based ranking. It's about how Google filters spam, and it's about scoring content based on queries, how the queries are changing, what they mean, what is their intent, and etc. So now let's look at what history data is. Okay, buckle up here because history data is a very heavily important concept in search and is described in very much depth in this patent. The history data is all the data that goes into computing the history score, and the data and all of that data can come from all of these stuff, and all of these stuff are described in huge depth in the patent. So I'll go through each one of those one by one and try to make sense out of it. This patent is called document scoring based on query analysis. Query analysis being a heavily important concept here. So to understand, there was an history behind that patent where they were looking at spam. One patent was looking at spam to improve document scoring. The other was looking at freshness to improve document scoring, etc., etc. And it ended up with the query analysis, which is the latest one, and encompasses all of these previous patents behind it. So what query analysis is, it's a query-based factor. And what it says is that a search engine will try to evaluate if queries are fresh seeking, stale seeking, trending, or if they change intents over time. And the reason why they want to do this is they want to know how to score the documents based on the type of query that they have. So if a query requires for more fresh content, like news content, news related query, then they will favor fresh content. And if it's looking for more stale content and they don't care about the fresh seeking component, then this ranking factor will have less impact. So some of the query-based factors, for example, is when user clicks for queries that can signal fresh and stale seeking queries. They also can look at overly broad documents that rank for discordant queries, and this could indicate spam, for example. Or they could try to find stale document based on how user interacts with the content. So the first query-based factor is user behavior. So one thing that can be looked at is when user clicks on older documents that are ranking lower than a fresher, that means that it could signal a stale seeking query. So for example, if you search for a certain query and people click on that second one that is older than the newer, or they click on the third one, then it may improve the ranking of the second one, but not just the second one. It may improve the ranking of the third one because people don't want to have newer content. The opposite is also true. If people just click on fresher content that is ranked below older content, that may signal that they are seeking for fresh seeking queries. So all fresh content will rank higher than older content. Another query-based factor is trending queries. Google tries to see if a query is becoming cooler or if it's a more hip topic. So how they would do this is they could look at trends. So if you have a growth in queries and documents, so you have a lot of people searching for it and a lot of the documents being created at the same time, this may signal trending or breaking news. And the documents that are associated with those trending terms may rank higher in the future for those terms. If we see no growth of content, no growth of the number of queries, but the content gets updated. So one case where you would see this is, for example, sports events. So if you search for the Super Bowl, there is always the same number of queries, there is always the same number of documents being created, but the difference is that the names of the documents, the title of the documents will always change over time because it will change team names. So they will talk about the winner of this year, the winner of the previous year, uh, and so on. So this signifies a change of it intent. So this Google can know about that. If you go here and you have a lot of queries growing, but document don't change, this could signal Google a viral sensation. So it gives Google the opportunity to know of a new topic very early on, even if people haven't started writing about it. And it can be created like, for example, a superstar writes a Twitter post and everyone is searching for that term, but no one has started writing about it. The opposite can also be true. Google could look at the growth in document even though the queries haven't changed. So sometimes government will write something very important and share it to all news outlets. And what will happen is Google will see a surge in the number of documents, and people haven't started searching for that query yet. So it allows Google to have this early insights into trending topics, even though people don't search for queries. So you can see why Google looks at documents and looks at queries, trends in order to understand what's going on in the query world. Another query-based factor is whether a query is topical or specific. So what Google will try to look at is whether documents are ranking only for broad topical queries or if they rank for very specific queries. One example of this is a document may have been ranking very well for World Series and Houston Astros World Series and stuff like this last year because they were the winning, but they never updated. If the other page never updated their content for this one, uh, people will stop searching for Astros World Series. So this page will stop getting the Chicago World Series, so people will go with more broad queries such as World Series 2005, World Series champion. So we can see that these are broad queries, and over time, Google will kind of dilute the ranking for that page because they will understand that this page is outdated over time. When you get more specific queries in your search terms, then that means that you're more specific, you're more related to what people currently search for, and you've you've been updated. So this, so you want to make sure that your content stays topical over time, uh, in order to keep ranking for those specific queries. And the last query-based factors that was mentioned in the patent is discordant queries. So if a document starts ranking for multiple discordant queries, such as here on the right, you're ranking for buy shoes, buy cats, hire a DJ, that may signal spam. And the other thing that may signal spam is whether there are redirects from a document to an unrelated page. So if you have a document that used to talk about the Bible and then you redirect it to a casino gambling site, that may very well signal spam. So we've understand now what are the query-based ranking factors. Then we can look at how inception dates of your document can impact your scoring. So how the inception date can be used. So first, what the inception date is when Google thinks your document was created. So it is used in many places. It is used to identify trends in link growth or content updates. It is used to modify the link weight based on that growth. It is used to modify ranking based on whether a document is fresh seeking or stealth seeking. It can help with freshness evaluation and it can help identify spam attempts. So what goes into the inception date? So what Google says in the patent here is that they could just look at the date, the HTTP last modified header, or even the sitemap in order to know if a document was created as a certain date. But this is easily controllable by the host. So I just change the date on my document and sitemaps and all, and then Google would suddenly think everything is fresh. That doesn't work only like this. So Google also looks at stuff that you cannot really absolutely control, such as when they first discovered the link, when they first crawled it, or when the first time that they found a document that linked to it, or they can even go deeper. They could wait for a document to be linked at least a certain amount of times before. For example, if it was linked 5 times in 2020, but really it got linked 2,000 times in 2021, then they could define that the inception date is in 2021. Or they can look at when they first indexed it, or they can even look at when the domain was created. So how do they use that date in order to modify the link scoring? Then they just say, okay, they use that inception date in order to draw that trend in link growth. So if they wouldn't have that inception date, all they would do is they would just look at the absolute number of links, and the page that has 10,000 links would automatically rank better than the page that has 10 links. But the thing is, it's possible that a newer document gets a faster rate of link than an older document, although the other one has more link. Maybe the newer document that gets linked faster, quicker, may be better. So if we have that document that has 10 years and 100 years and 100 links, uh, compared to that document 2 that has 1 day and 50 links, we can see that this document 2 is being linked at a far greater frequency than document 1. So if Google gets a query and they identify that the query is stale seeking, then what they would do is that Google would favor that document that has more link and is older. However, if the user is searching for fresh seeking, for example, people are looking at news about something, then what they would do is they would put favor into that younger with faster rate of linking document. So this setup is better for fresh seeking. And if we have another document and this one is 2 days but got 10,000 links, we can see that based on the entire corpus, this one is out of proportion. So what Google may do is just flag the document tree as spam. Google will also look at the entire corpus of documents that is ranked for a query. So for example, if you search for jobs in New York, they would take the top, I don't know, 2,000 pages ranking for jobs in New York. And what they would do is they would compute the average age of all the documents that are ranking for that query. So if they discover that for that query, the average document age is 10 years, then they would use this one when it's a stale seeking query. If they discover that the average document age is 5 days, then they would lean towards something that is closer to that, because 5 days is kind of fresh seeking. So they would use document two, which is 1 day, since it is the most recent document out of the tree, and this is a fresh seeking query. So we could definitely see that if those three documents was the entire corpus, the average number of days would lean toward uh, a few days instead of leaning towards 10 years. So the 10 years would be excluded, and one of those two would rank higher. So now we'll talk about content updates, which is one of the very important aspect of this patent. How often a content get updated and what is the amount of content that gets updated may influence your score. So Google will try to compute a content update score that will be integrated into the history score. So how they compute that is by checking the update frequency, and they add it to the update amount. So how often it is updated plus how much of that content changes over time, and then it will compute the update score with this formula. So what the update frequency score tells you is, if you look at this trend, you have the number of the average time between updates in days, and you over time you see that you have one update here, another update here, and if you over time you update it more and more in that time, you can see that over time the update frequency score will grow higher than it was here. When you look at the update amount score, that means how much of that page changes and how much of that page changes. So the thing that can influence the update amount score is the number of new links, the percentage of new links, so the number of new links divided by all the links that you have, or the percentage content change. So how much percentage of the content on page has changed. So they can either look at that trend, or they can compare the percentage change in the last X days. So essentially, they look at both the update frequency, is it updated more frequently, and how much of it is getting updated, or how much the links are changing, pointing to that page, can signal the update amount. So here, not all changes are equal. So some changes have very low value. So if you go on your website and just remove a JavaScript, that has no impact for Google. You're not actually updating the page. So ads is another thing. And I have another patent that tells you how Google may index those content change. But essentially, here is what they've listed as low value weights. And what is interesting here is they mention the title and the anchor text as higher weights in terms of content update. So if you're changing links, you're likely sending a strong signal that your content has changed. So for some query, recent documents are very important. And what they mention here is that frequently asked questions, that for frequently asked question, the most recent version would be highly desirable. So it bears thinking that if you're trying to rank for FAQ search feature, maybe, and that's my assumption, it is possible that fresher frequently asked question may get better treatment in search feature. But that's not mentioned in the patent. That's just me thinking aloud right now. Let's move to the link-based criteria. So Google uses links as for ranking. This is not new. And this patent tells some of the information of how these links are being mentioned. So you can go here, you'll have more detail into how link-based criteria work. But the current patent is mentioning a lot of these factors that goes into link-based ranking. So essentially, what Google tries to do is that they try to find when links were added and removed. They want to look at the rate of change and they want to see if there's a trend or increase or decrease in link growth. And let's look at some of these link-based criteria. Bear in mind, a good link may go unchanged when a document gets updated. That comes from a Google engineer that I don't remember the name and where I've read that, but that's what it's mentioned. You want to think about that. If you change it, so what you want is a page that gets updated all the time, but the links stay. So the links will build value over time. So the freshness of the link can be influenced by when the link was updated, when the anchor text was updated, or when the document containing the link was updated. So if you update a document but don't change the link, then you're signaling freshness to that link and you're signaling that this link is valuable. This takes computing resources to Google, so they may update the link freshness only when major changes to a document occur. So if you have a blog roll at the bottom of the page, your links always get changed. It may not be valuable enough. But if you change the main content in a significant way, then all the links on that page may get updated in link freshness. And the last point here to consider is that the links that are on pages that never change will decay over time. So not only the page will decay if you never update your content, the links on that page will decay as well. So if you have a page A and a page B, and a page A links to page B, and you never update the page A, then the links pointing to page B will lose value. So page B over time will lose value from those links. So what they will go is Google will look at the age distribution of links. And if the age distribution is closer to 0, then it signals that the links are fresh. And if the age distributions of link is closer to a very old thing, that signal that is stale. Google may also use link to evaluate link spam. So if they find spikes in link growth, it may signal spam. So if links go from 0 to 1,000,000 in a day, then it's spam. They have some examples that are listed in the patent about what they think about link spam, such as buying links, exchanging links, and non-editorial links. So guest posts, refer logs, pages where anyone can add a link, like a comment section on a blog post. If you want to know more about how Google looks at link spam, I suggest you read Method for Detecting Link Spam in Hyperlinked Databases. I may create a tutorial about that in the future, but it's not ready yet. Now, pause this video right now, go and take a coffee. We're not even halfway right now. It's a very complex pattern to describe. Now let's look at what anchor text ranking factors are based on this patent. So the anchor text based criteria tells us that all links prior to that may be ignored if a page changes focus or if the anchor text linking to it changed significantly. So what Google tries to find out here by these two mention is they try to see if people try to acquire an expired domain and completely change it. So for example, if in 2020 people were linking to a document with anchor text such as cat photo, cat pictures, and then in 2023 everyone links to that page with casino, gambling, casino sites, then you can see that there is a change of focus that happens somewhere around that point. And what Google may do is say, okay, let's ignore everything before that. So there are three anchor text-based criteria mentioned in this patent, and is the update in anchor text, the update in documents that differs from the anchors, and the freshness in anchors. So the update, so what does this mean? The update in document that differs from the anchor is, for example, if you have a document that talks about the Bible, you add anchor text that link to it saying Bible, the Bible, Bible. So you can have these anchor texts, and someone buys that expired domain and redirect it to a casino gambling site. Then the anchor text doesn't represent the content on the page anymore. Thus, Google would exclude all of these and just remove that from their scoring. So they may, what they say is they would probably just demote the links completely, not necessarily impacting the website, but just saying we don't consider those links anymore. So here, when they look at anchor text freshness, what they would say is, okay, they will look at the freshness and then of an anchor uh, in order to determine the freshness of the document where it's linked to. So the freshness of the anchor can be determined based on the when the appearance or the updated of the anchor text, when the link that is associated with the anchor text changes, the link here, or when the document where it's found get updated, or when the document where it points to gets updated. So if you want to learn more about this specific anchor text based ranking, you can read System and Methods Determining Document Freshness. Google will also look at n-grams and anchor text. Okay, an n-gram, what it is if you have a sentence that says the cat is better than the dog, then you can say the cat is a bigram. It has two tokens. A trigram would be three tokens. So the cat is, and a fourth gram would be four tokens. So the cat is better. So n-gram is an assimilation of the number of tokens here. So Google can use the n-grams and anchor text. So they can take all the anchor text and try to find, for example, common bigrams, so common two-letter tokens that comes up all the time. So if they discover that there is a massive growth in anchor bigrams, even though people try to make it very intelligent by doing link building, but modifying slightly the anchor text to tell Google, okay, yeah, these are natural links because we're changing. But if Google identify that common bigrams are there all the time and growing very quick, they might identify spam attempt. So what they would try to spot is a large number of identical anchors for many documents, or deliberate different anchors from many documents as well. So by deliberate is, again, they look at trends, they try to identify if there is some kind of attempt. Those anchors may be used to score the documents where the links point to. And when they want to limit the score, they may add a cap to suspect links. So they could say, okay, all these suspect links, bigrams that come all the time, okay, let's give them a maximum value for all those links together. Like they have 10,000 links, let's give the value of like 100 maximum, and However, many links more created comes up. Let's not improve the score. They may use a continuous scale as well, like a linear regression, to evaluate the likelihood of link spam, and they could use that scale to score the documents. Now, another thing that impacts the history score is the traffic score. So, what the traffic-based criteria generally says is that by identifying repeating traffic, search engine try to adjust the scoring of document during and outside these periods. So, declining traffic over time hints at the staleness of document. Also, the latest versus the highest peak can traffic season can say, okay, this document has peak seasons or weekly traffic patterns. And one way they can track this is by using the ads you put on your site. So it would tell you the rates. So the ads, and when we say the ads, if we're talking about the Google controlled ads, they can look at these ads and the rate at which these ads are presented over time, the quality of the advertisers that are used, and even the CTR on those ads. So all of these can come into modifying the ranking for your documents. Next, this is another super important user behavior. It is not a surprise that Google tries to understand if the user are satisfied by your document for a given query. So here what this patent tells you is that uh, the average time spent on page over time may impact ranking. And I'm not talking about the metrics that you see in Google search, Google Analytics. I'm talking about a metric that the Google tries to derive from various click data, historical data, and other things like this. So Google will try to draw an aggregate user behavior or individual or aggregate user behavior that can be used to alter the score that is associated with the document. So for example, if a decrease in time spent over time on your page may determine that the document is stale or outdated. Where this Google gets this, it gets this from click data mostly. And one thing that is that goes into click data is, for example, the long click. If you don't know about the long click, is they will look at when Google people clicked on a search result from search, went to your site, and when they came back. So the time between the first click and when they came back to search tells them how long they spent on your page. They're not looking at Google Analytics. They mention us there's stuff like historical data, biometric data, and purchase decision data in the patents. They will look at if the number of queries that lead to a click increases or decreases over time. So in this way, they not only look at the quality of your search result, they look at the quality of overall search results. So if a lot of query leads to more click over time, that means that this query it has a better value. Like they are better at satisfying the query for that specific query. And then they may improve ranking of the document that target this higher satisfaction query than the one that people don't click often. They may look at if the click-through rate, and they say they don't look at the click-through rate, but they mention click-through rate in the patent. So I've heard Gary Eiley saying they don't use CTR in ranking. Whatever the debate is in this patent, click-through rate is mentioned and click data is mentioned as being used in ranked. But where it's used is mostly to score the overall quality of a search result. So Google may look at the query jobs in New York and jobs in Las Vegas. Maybe the overall click-through rate of jobs in New York is 90%, and the overall click-through rate of jobs in Las Vegas is 60% for all the search results, then they would say, okay, jobs in New York has a higher satisfaction than jobs in Las Vegas, and then they may try to use that to modify the score of all documents or the ranking of the documents. So you have no impact, you have no influence on that unless you're ranking number one. So if you're ranking number one, you may want to increase your own CTR. Thus, you're improving the overall quality of the search result by improving CTR of the top result. And then you may slightly influence that. So another example of user behavior is the one we mentioned earlier. If people click on older document or newer document that is ranked below, they may modify all the rankings of newer documents, for example. So yeah, so I suggest you go read. If you didn't understand that section, go in the patent, read that section because it's a super important thing to understand. How Google uses user behavior data in ranking, you must understand that. And hopefully I did a good job at explaining it. Now, Google may look at your entire domain information in order to rank your individual documents. So why would they do that? They would try to detect spammers. So they will look at your DNS server, where you're like, what are the domain name servers where your website is hosted. So if you are hosted with domain name servers where only domains are hosted, or when you only host like porn website, or you're the only company that hosts your content on that, all of these things may impact your ranking. So this is probably more important to understand for the black hat SEO who are doing heaps to try to go around Google rules. But if you're a genuine SEO doing just your regular stuff, the only thing that is impactful for you here is just choose a well-known uh, website host and try not using shady DNS settings or whatever. Just make sure that if you host your website on something like AWS, or if you host it on Green Geek, for example, then you're fine. You'll have everything will be fine. But when you try to go around Google and build like 10,000 website or buy expired domain, then you may want to look into this section of the patent in order to understand how you can try avoid Google penalizing you. Now, Google looks at ranking history as well in order to improve your ranking. What this means is that they will look how well you rank right now in order to rank you in the future. So what Google will look is they will look at the history of positions that you have for a given query. So if a search result goes from position 25 to position 1, it may signal spam. If a website increases in rankings for like 2,000 pages at once and they go from position 5 to position 1, then Google may start like tuning down the ranking uplift you can get. They may just slow down your ranking uplift just to make sure, reevaluate, and see things like this. So this is how your current ranking changes may impact your future rankings. So if you see very big variations like the one I just mentioned, for Google, it either means that you build a very topical authority website and that you have like your document is very topical, or you attempt to spam search engine. So this is why they would try to cap it at a certain rate. One thing that is interesting is that they mentioned that very high quality website may may not see that cap that of limit because they just trust those websites. So we're talking about Yahoo, TripAdvisor, stuff like this. Um, and I'm talking about TripAdvisor here. In all due respect, I work for TripAdvisor. I'm not saying I have inside information about that. I'm just listing this website as a potential very high quality website. Um, and what Google would say is that a drop in rank over time may signal outdated content. So if Google sees that your ranking are dropping over time, they may use that and say, okay, let's further reduce the score over time for that document. So I was talking about how Google may limit rank spam. Essentially, if they see a spike in ranks from position 30 to 0 in one day, they may just put that increased threshold and say, okay, you don't go above that ranking update. So you would have gone right there, but really, essentially, they would stop you here. And again, authoritative documents may not be limited this way. When they talk about authoritative documents, they mention government pages, web directories, and pages that have maintained a steady ranks over time, which is why I was mentioning TripAdvisor, which has been positioned very highly for a lot of queries for what, 10 years already. Then they try to identify commercial queries. And commercial queries for them is when the top documents have a high score and the ranks vary a lot. So if you search for best shoes, uh, it is likely that the top ranking document will not always be the one, and it won't always be Google, Amazon, or Etsy or whatever. It will vary quite often uh, uh, for lots of query. So they know that, okay, this is a commercial queries because top ranking pages are switching a lot from one to the other. So what Google want to know that is because these commercial queries are high spam ranks because a lot of people want to make money out of them. For commercial query, Google may would slow down rank increase, they would slow down rank transition, and for non-commercial queries, they may apply less of these rank spam transition. If you want to learn more about that rank transition function, read this patent. Google, and I've hinted at that in the past, Google scores query search results. So it's not always about ranking your own document. Google tries to improve user satisfaction for each queries over time. So they may alter all document if they find out a certain query has low satisfaction. So whatever you do, you won't influence this, but you will know that this may influence your own ranking. So the number of searches for a query, the click data, and the document, that the number of document for a search result will all modify the scores for a query search result. So for example, uh, COVID-related query went from the lowest query search result score before the pandemic to one of the highest query result score they have ever seen during the pandemic. And this is because a lot of people search for it, a lot of people click on all the documents, and a lot of people talk about COVID. So this kind of like topical phenomenon definitely it modifies the search results score and modifies how Google rank documents for those queries. So in cases where people were ranking for the COVID related queries before, like they had zero value. But if these organizations that were doing research on COVID or whatever virus it was before the pandemic, and they were the first one to publish things about that, they may have ranked very well during the pandemic, and they may keep ranking very well in the future. So this is just So it's really important for you to keep an eye on what's going on in the trends in the future, in the present, in order to be able to be reactive enough to improve your overall topical score. There, let's go fast. These are less important, but Google talks about bookmarks and favorites that may influence your ranking. So if people bookmark your document, they mentioned that they look at the Chromium browser. They might look at the Chromium browser to use that. Not sure how much they use it, but they just hinted at it. And now backlinks. Oh, okay. Backlinks are very important. We talked about links, we talked about anchor text, and now we're talking about links from independent peers. Independent peers are unrelated documents. So what Google is saying, okay, is uh, you want to have links from unrelated documents, but if you have a large link row from a lot of unrelated documents, then it may signal spam. Uh, if it's even more if all those unrelated documents are like link directories that have like 12,000 links on each page, then you may be signal spam. And it's even worse if those pages that links to you uh, all have the same anchor text or have anchor tags that are completely not relevant to your page. So this is how Google looks at link spam. One thing I'm saying is don't go around and use URL removal tool for Google like don't do anything. I'm just saying don't build crappy link, but don't go around and tell Google don't trust those links. All right, last but not least, document topics. Whew, it's a long session this one. Google tries to track owners in their web page. So they will look how topics change over time. And if they see significance in topics for a given page, it may indicate that a document has changed owners. So expired domain acquisition again. So what Google may do is just forget all the previous indicators such as document score, link score, anchor text before the time when it changed owners. If you have a spike or disappearance in the number of topics related to a page, this can indicate spam. So it can say that this is a doorway page. So for example, if your topic was about the Bible and now it's not about the Bible, Google may say, okay, this is a doorway page and may reduce the score of that document. They use topic extraction techniques such as categorization, which is a machine learning classification, URL analysis, content analysis, clustering of documents, summarization, and unique low frequency word. So these are all somewhat natural language processing topic techniques to extract topics from a document. Thus, I won't linger too much into how they do topic extraction, which we'll talk later in natural language processing sessions. Big topic of this entire patent is freshness. A fresh document is not necessarily good or bad. It depends on the query. Yes, it's mostly good to have fresh document, but not necessarily absolutely. So what you want to do, what Google looks at is document creation date, the anchor growth, the traffic, the content change, the links growth, and user selections. The other big topic in this patent is spam. They look at all these freaking stuff to be able to identify whether or not you're a crappy website and someone who tries to influence rankings. There are certain types of queries that may be more subject to spam filtering, such as commercial queries. And high authority website may be excluded from spam filtering. What SEOs can all do about all that we've just learned, let's look at specific actions you can take. Focus on freshness. Fighting link decay anchor decay, page decay is one of the very powerful things you should do in SEO. When a page starts losing traffic, you should update it. So if you see over time that a page loses traffic, then you should compare your current article to your competitors and find out if they started writing better content than what you do. Fill up the missing topic, update your content, and republish. If you find out that your content is still the best content out there, but it's lost ranking, then just republish the freaking article, put the links at the top of the page. What you want to do is update the content, not the anchors. So you don't want to update necessarily the links on the page if they're still valid because you want to build link value over time. If the content changed intent, so if you discover that people started searching differently for this type of query, and then you update your content to better fit that intent, you should probably think about your entire website and say, okay, I should maybe change the anchors now. The intent has changed. I'm changing the anchors pointing to that page. If you want to fight content decay, then you may add a link that have a high freshness score from a page like the homepage. So for example, I have that article that is losing decay over time. I can add it to my homepage where I know it's always fresh, always have a new fresh links to it. So this link or even a blog category or stuff like this, and these will signal Google that the page where you link to has been updated. If you find out that whenever you republish, it never works, then it's possible that Google don't care about fresh content. So you can go to Google and just look at past month. And if you find out that the top ranking page are not changing when you look at past month, that means that it's probably not a fresh thinking. And you can go, if you're in the news outlet, you can look at past hour even. But essentially, if you see that the search results in the past month are completely different than what is currently ranking, that means Google doesn't care that much about freshness. But if the top results, like if you're in the past hour and the top results are exactly the same, that means Google cares massively about freshness. And how do you fight content freshness? In WordPress, it's quite simple. You just republish an article. But what if you have an automated website? Then you want to combine uh, multiple signal. So you want to update enough content on the page, enough of the main content on the page. You want to push up the URL in the sitemap and change the last mod tag. You want to add links from high frequently updated pages, whether it's a hub page, whether it's the home page, whether it's a page category. You may update the RSS feed as well. You may update the date on your page, the last modified HTTP header as well. So if you update all those stuff at once, it signals massively. It mimics exactly what WordPress is doing when you update an article, but you can do it on a website that is not using WordPress, for example, by doing all these stuff to provide the ultimate signals to Google. The other thing you should do or can do is create dashboards from Google from Google Search Console data to keep a close eyes on what is decaying. So you can look at the last 3 months year-on-year traffic, and for example, this page has lost 35% of its traffic last 3 months compared to previous year. So this signals that this page has decayed and I should update it. Or you can combine multiple, an entire cluster, like all the queries that contain Python, for example, and look at the trend over time. And you can see that, okay, maybe there's some kind of decay here over time for the entire cluster, and then you can dive for each URL. You want to analyze user behavior as well. So you want to check if the search query is related to your websites in Google Search Console. So you go in Google Search Console performance report and you look at search query. and you search for changes in search intent for each URL. Change it, you try to identify trending topics and user preference, what URL gets high CTR or what queries get high CTR. Maybe the intent of your page is changing. You want to adapt your content to align the changes in the user behavior. And if the CTR decreases on your page, just go on SERP, search for the queries that you rank in Search Console, and look at the SERP and identify what may have changed. And I highly recommend that you take screenshots of the SERP and store them somewhere with the dates when you took those screenshots so you have a reference over time to compare with. Or you can use web scraping and try to spam Google to get those pages. And the other thing you can do is monitor user engagement metrics in Google Analytics in order to spot long sessions that should be short, or short sessions that should be long, or bounces that should not exist. All of these things will influence how you rank in search. When you monitor this, then how can you influence it? So what you go do is you go in Search Console and you check for your pages with the most traffic. If the traffic to those pages is very high and the queries for each page ranks often from 1 to 3, then what you want to do is you want to optimize CTR. If your traffic is low to those pages or you have almost no traffic to your website, don't go optimize your CTR. Like, it's not important. What you want to do is you want to keep building your topical authority by writing more and better content. If your average rank for all the query is always below position 5, then don't do CTR. It's too low down the page. What you want to first is increase your rankings by improving topical authority by writing more and better content. If you find out in your queries that there is a missing intent that is missing in your content, so if you find queries that your content don't answer, that means you may think about creating that content or just uh, update your content to fit that queries for which you're already ranking for. This way, you're improving user satisfaction over time. I really want to talk about CTR. So if you're in that first situation where you rank well, you get a lot of traffic, you want to improve CTR because over time this will have an impact on your clicks, your revenue, and even your ranking. So stuff you can do, you want to think about having the most space as you can take in the SERP as possible. Trust me, the more space you take, the better the CTR. Even if you don't have the testing capacity, just think about that. If you take more space, you'll get more clicks, even if you don't see it in your Search Console data. If you're high traffic, rank from position 1, and you update CTR, you take more space, you'll get better CTR. Color influence, and when I take color, I'm mostly mentioning visual elements such as thumbnails. So what you can do, check SERP for your top query. If all your competitors get thumbnail, you should optimize your image. If none of your competitors gets thumbnail, maybe skip to the next point. Title tag, the more space you take. So if you have a very short title tag, you'll get less click. If you have a long title tag that takes more space, you'll have more click. Beware of how Google rewrites your titles. You can try getting structured snippets by adding HTML tables to your content. You may get higher SERPs and get more clicks. You may use structured data to get the how-to or the FAQ, or try to get the blue link with something using like a table of content. Beware that those three things don't work well together. Google will never show FAQ if they show how to, and they will never show the blue links if they show FAQ. So what you want to do is if you add FAQs and they're not ranking, then you could use the lucky WordPress table of content to get the blue links, but you need to make sure that you don't have the FAQ structured data on your page to get this. So essentially what I'm saying is experiment, try to improve your CTR in Search Console. Figure it out. I'm not a black hat SEO. I don't know how to filter that, and I don't want to do this. I focus in the long run. But if you want to do this, uh, if you're engaging in stuff like expired domain acquisition, make sure you monitor your link graph and your anchor text to make sure that each page still matches the intent. You want to check your Wayback Machine for each page to make sure that you keep the intent and the queries and the topic from the historical page to your new domain. You want to be aware of the DNS that you use. You want to limit link acquisition and focus on link building through appealing content because it's more natural. And one thing you want to do is mimic the average rate of link acquisition. So if people get 100 links a week, then that's what you want to get. You don't want to have 12,000 links a week. So I have no more idea apart from what I've read in the patents. I've not optimized link building or expired domain techniques in years because topical authority for the win. I've only worked on content my last 6 years, and that's what is working. The other thing you can do for SEO is optimize for trending topics. Stay updated with what's going on, like try to integrate trending topics in your content strategy. It may be a lot more effort, but it may also help you rank for like trending seasonal stuff like Black Friday and all. Um, but if you're always aware of what's going on in the industry, it will make you a topical authority and will influence your ranking in the future. But this is time consuming. Uh, the other thing you want to do is keep a log of what your competitor documents are doing. So whenever you see content decay, look at your competitor. Just don't go looking at what your own page is ranking for. Don't go. Also look at what they're doing. It may influence how well you're ranking. The other thing you can do is monitor link growth. So you want to keep track of the number of links pointing to your site and compare it to previous period. I'm not doing that quite often. You can do this, but really managing external link is a lot of time and a lot of money. That doesn't work as well as content. Uh, but you can still keep that in mind. Make sure that in the future, you keep linking to your old page that are still relevant in your other articles. So as you build content, make sure that you're not leaving behind some content that was valuable in the past that is still relevant and keep linking to this content. And the way I found that is really easy in WordPress is you just use internal link juicer and set up keywords for each page. So whenever you use that kind of keywords in new articles, you keep linking to it, and so you're not monitoring link growth, but actively building links to all your pages. So as long as you talk about those topics, these pages will not or should not decay. And yay, this is the last. Monitor your anchor tags. I'm not doing that much monitoring of anchor tags all the time on my day-to-day, but still have a dashboard for it. So keep track of your anchor text that people link to it, and make sure that if people link to you in a different way over time, that the intent of your content is still represented in that. And if not, that may mean that you should maybe review your content. So this is fantastic. We've covered the entire patent and it was really long. So make sure that you follow me and see you in the next tutorial.